homage to him and remember.
Yeah.
Let's do some memories. Let's do some memories.
Okay,
Can you see
I'll
her?
go first since he's my brother, and
Not
then
a-
whatever can do that. And if it's not pouring outside, we'll take a little quick walk outside, and we have something to distribute in my yard, which I'll show you. But anyway, so
Almost.
first I just want to thank y'all for being here. You especially, because you didn't even know them really. Is that going to happen all
No,
the time?
it was Josh. Josh did it.
All right. Anyway, so my brother's name was Frederick. Freddy, we called him Freddy Spaghetti, actually, was his nickname when he was a kid. His nickname for me was Fats. That's what he called me.
Fats. What?
Yes, I don't know why.
As in
But
Fats
probably because I
Domino's?
wasn't. That was just Fats. That was his nickname for me. I think because I wasn't. But anyway, he was Freddy Spaghetti. I met my brother when he
He
was.
may not have liked Freddy Spaghetti.
I don't know. It came out that way. My brother Joel was so skinny. We called him Skinnamarink because he was like a stick. He was so skinny. Anyway, when he was 5 was when I met him. I didn't meet him till he was 5. I was 3 because his mom had died of tuberculosis, and he was in an orphanage as a small child, which wasn't great. And then somewhere in there, his dad, who you all knew as Grandpa Sam, collected him and moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, and that's where he met your grandma.
Where were they? New York?
No, Cleveland, Ohio, was where he was born. They moved to California, and somehow or other they met, and 2 weeks later they were married. So it was pretty quick. He was Grandpa Sam was looking for a family to put for his son, and my mom was looking for a family for me because my dad had died in the war. So they were both looking for a family, and they came together, and all of a sudden there I was, and I had a brother. I thought it was the greatest thing ever. I remember my first time meeting him, and I remember he was very shy and very quiet, and that's my memory of him, was that he looked kind of scared half to death, but he was a great brother, so I was lucky to have him. I remember about him, my notes. I remember how much he loved to eat, and he never ever left anything on his plate. It was always completely clean. I'm not sure he had enough to eat when he was in the orphanage. He cleaned up all the food, but he never snacked between meals. He was like the best eater you could ever want a kid to be, because he ate everything you put on his
I'm sure
plate.
they taught him that at the orphanage.
I'm sure they taught him that at the orphanage.
Like in all the movies.
Yeah. I remember Halloween. For some reason, Grandpa Sam always dressed him up as a hobo, which is kind of odd because of the way he ended up living sort of on the edge. Always he would burn a piece of cork and mark his face all black with that, and put him in raggedy clothes, and then we'd go trick-or-treating. That was his costume year after year after year.
That seems like a common costume back then.
Well, and I
like
have
the
this-
movies and stuff.
Everybody had ragged clothes, and everybody had a quirk.
So I put together a few pictures of him you can look at after a while, but there's a Halloween picture of him, me dressed as Queen Esther, in my Queen Esther costume.
Princess somebody.
And him as a hobo, because that's the only costume he ever had.
Grandpa Sam didn't make you be a hobo too?
No, that was I remember Halloween.
She would have been a streetwalker.
No, I always wore the same costume, which was my Queen Esther
Esther
costume. My
outfit.
mother just kept making it longer and longer and longer for me. So that was funny. I remember he had hobbies. He collected stamps. People don't do this anymore. He had a stamp collection, this huge collection
I
of
had a
foreign
stamp
stamps.
collection.
I did too.
Well,
I had
did you?
one.
Yeah. I thought collecting stamps was the coolest thing, but people don't even send letters anymore. So he had a stamp collection. In fact, the one time anyway.
Tell us.
The one time I got caught for shoplifting, which was the only time I ever stole anything in my life. I was 9 years old, and I went into this little store with a little bit of money to buy a Christmas present for him, and I wanted to buy stamps for his stamp collection. And I couldn't decide. There were 2 packages. I only had enough money for one. So I put one in my pocket, and I paid for the other one, and the lady at the counter caught me, and I never stole anything again. Ever after that. So it was the best lesson
Was
ever.
that like pre-cameras? You had to be really bad.
Pre-cameras. It was
What
You
age?
still
pre-cameras.
got caught?
Not because she couldn't get it, but because she couldn't decide.
She said to me, "What's that in your jacket pocket?" And I was so embarrassed. I had little Joel with me, my little brother, and I just grabbed his hand, and we ran out of there, and I never went back in that store again. But I remember my brother collected stamps. He also He also worked in a tropical fish store, and he had this beautiful aquarium full of the most beautiful
Really?
tropical fish. Yeah.
It's hard to take care of.
No, and he took it all by himself. He did that. He was crazy about fish. He was crazy about building things and motorcycles and bikes and cars. He ended up with a Model A car that he used to drive me to school in, which was really funny. But he had a thing for motorcycles and motorbikes, which drove his dad crazy because he was always sure he'd have an accident. And of course, he had an accident one day on his motorcycle. He tried not to hit a dog that ran in front of him, and he ended up in the hospital. It was like big trauma, and he survived. It was fine. It wasn't a big deal, but anyway, he had a thing for motorized vehicles, for building things, stamps and fish.
What was
Those are
his foot doing?
And he was born with a congenital deformity that was in his family. Absolutely everybody in his mother's family has this same condition. It's very rare, but the gene for it must be really strong because they all have it. And it causes the muscles in the legs and sometimes the hands to shrink. So he had his feet were a little bit deformed. He walked all the time and he could stand for a long time, but he couldn't run and he never did any sports. But I think maybe the motorcycle and later on the horse, got him off his feet and he could sort of be with people, not have to walk around and feel like he wasn't that stable on his feet.
He had cool shoes.
He had shoes that were made to fit his feet, yeah. But that was a hereditary thing that
But it didn't affect his hands.
it might have towards the end. I'm not really sure. They were getting a little bit harder for him
It's
to
like
move.
arthritis.
But it was mostly it affected his feet. Never slowed him down. Never complained about it or anything. But when we met, at one point we met a relative of his mother's, and she explained that everybody in the family had that same disability, different degrees of badness. It's a weird one. So then he was an artist for a while. He actually went to college. He got a degree and became a teacher out at. He went to Long Beach State. He was a teacher for a while, teaching shop classes to high school kids until he really burnt out on that. And then he was a sculptor for a while, working with metal. And you'll see some of his stuff around that he still has from when he did welding. And then he got interested in horses, long distance riding on horses. Who remembers his horse Regalana, the blonde horse? Anyway, out of the blue, all of a sudden he had a horse. And then he needed to move up to Oregon so he'd have a yard big enough for the horse to run around in, which he did. And eventually, he used to race this horse in long distance races.
Really?
Yeah, he did. He raced it.
Like 100-mile races.
24-hour race. You're on the horse a long, long time.
But you walk with the horse.
And it's about endurance, really, if you can last as long as the horse. And then.
I went riding with friends from college. We came up from San Diego
I didn't know
and
that.
went out to Griffith Park somewhere where he kept the horse.
No, I didn't know
And
that.
like Alan and Mav I think came, and Alan for sure. And we went and we walked his horse on like this mile or two trail or something like that. I think
Was he walking or he was riding? He was.
Yeah, we were walking mostly, but we might have rode. We might have rode a little bit, or he might have rode, but it was mostly kind of walking.
I didn't know that.
And yeah, Griffith Park. It was like a sunny afternoon.
That's cool. He put me on the horse once. I don't know if you guys remember. You would remember this. He put me on the horse with no saddle and nothing to hold on to, and I immediately fell off.
Yeah, a blanket or something. I feel like
Yeah,
I feel like we
like
did
a
that.
rope.
I think
We
you
did
buttered
that.
the horse first.
I just remember it was like, oh boy, there I go, because there was nothing to grab. But anyway, that was his horse. And then, in our family, there were things that were important. We went on a lot of peace marches when we were kids. And he continued to be interested in peace. We were interested in social justice in my family. He was interested in that. We were interested in racial equality. He was interested in that. He actually went on one of the freedom rides in the South in the 60s. And he rode on a bus. I don't know if he was ever
Really?
arrested. Yeah. But so that was sort of the things that mattered to him was peace in the world, social justice, racial equality. And then he became very obsessed, which is good enough. Everybody did kind of as the earth started to fall apart. He became very interested in how to save the earth, how to save the planet, how to save the animals, how to save the trees. And when he was living in Oregon, he bought 200 acres of forest on the side of the hill, hoping that he could protect it forever. That was part of his legacy, was he kept those trees from being cut down for a lot of years. So he ended up in, as most of you know, some of you know, he lived in Oregon on 5 acres that he owned in a little trailer that was very dilapidated. He had no electricity, he had no water, he had no plumbing, he had no much of anything except he had a little puppy, his little dog, for company, and he was very happy. And he didn't want to move, and we tried and tried to say, you know, would you like us to help move you to a more modern place where you'll have, you know, a toilet that you can flush and water you can turn on, and heat in the winter and stuff like that. And he just loved living in his little woods, so he wouldn't move. And that was where he stayed for many years, was living like that off the land in this funny way. So, yeah. These are things you probably already know. But about my brother, what I want to remember about him, thank you guys, by the way, for being such good I am. I want to remember how sweet and kind he was. He was very gentle. He was a very generous person. He was very much not interested in himself. He didn't, you know, he was interested in other people, and other things were important to him, but he was not a selfish person. He was a very generous person, and very kind, and always curious about things, and always trying to make peace. If he could find a way to resolve any kind of problem between people, he thought there was always a way to resolve things peacefully. He even took a course on becoming a, what do you call that? When
Mediator.
Yes, a
Conflict.
mediator. Conflict managing mediator, whatever, and because he wanted to go out in the world and help people solve their problems peacefully, so he believed in that. Anyway, he didn't get a chance to do much, but he was that way if you had a conversation with him. And what mattered to him was what he referred to, since he didn't have children and he didn't have, you know, his own family, the family of man, which is the book, the family of man was his family, and he wanted to support the family of the planet and the earth, and try and keep us on a safe planet. So the things that he the things he wanted, he all the money he ever earned he put into his land. And when I chose to sell the land, which I did in the last month, it was so that the money from the land could be used for the things he cared about, because it seemed like, we had talked about it, that seemed like what made the most sense to do. So the where is it? Here it is. There were 8 charities he wanted all of his life savings to go to. So I'm going to pass this around. Just take one and pass them. These are the 8 charities that he supported. And that we'll get all of it. This is his legacy. This is where his life savings will go. And while you're passing that around, we have 8 of those. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. You can share one if you want to, Alex and Carmen, if you want to share. Our family has a legacy too. It's from Grandma. Basically, Grandma Seal, her savings went to me and Joel and to Fred. So that was passed down to my children. But since Fred didn't have a chance to spend much of his, some of it will come back to me, and some of it will go to Fred to be used for you guys. So when you go to Spain, and when you go to college, and when you go to get your teeth fixed, when you go when you're in school, and if you need help with your tuition or with your travel expenses or with your implants or whatever, I want you to know that's coming from Grandma Seal to us as a family, but it's also coming from Fred because he didn't get to use it for himself. So that's a gift from him and from my mom to all of you, and hopefully it will carry you for a while through things that you need. I'm happy to be able to share that. These are the 8 charities that he wanted his to be his legacy, where he wanted his savings to go. So you can just some of these you know.
Read them out loud.
Yeah, just go. Why don't you start? Just read.
Hang on a sec.
So I wanted you guys to know what he believed in, what was important to him.
This one is the Sierra Club, 1892. Protect and preserve wildlife and wild places, conservation, clean energy, and national parks in Yosemite.
And created Yosemite, actually, was created by the Sierra Club. And John Muir. Right.
Southern Poverty Law, 1971. Racial justice in the South, end white supremacy, and advance human rights through court. Blah, 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 blah.
Court cases. It's lawyers who protect human rights and fight against racial injustice. Yes. Southern Poverty Law. I'm sorry.
Doctors Without Borders, 1970. Emergency medical help in areas of conflict, disasters, epidemics in over 70 countries.
Barbara's Crew.
Barbara. Yeah, go Barbara. Right.
Many times.
Right.
Ours is ACLU.
I have to tell you what that stands for because I didn't write it out. It's the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU.
Defends constitutional rights, freedom of speech, press, religion, racial justice, women's rights, immigrant rights, and criminal justice.
Thank you. Right, ACLU.
We have the Jane Goodall Institute. She just passed.
Just
To rescue endangered wildlife and began with chimpanzees.
For champagne.
PETA, People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, and animal suffering in labs and cosmetics and food production.
Very good choices.
Earth Justice League, founded in 1971. Environmental lawyers promote clean energy, clean air and water, and protect endangered species.
These places
Thank
all
you.
have their hands full right now too.
Thank you all for
Much
reading
appreciated,
that.
I'm sure.
And if anybody, we can go around if anyone wants to share a memory of Fred or